All right. Welcome, everyone, to the October 2020 Southern Fried DNN User Group Meetup. We are excited today. We've got a growing full house of excited people ready to do something a little bit different tonight. We often have speakers come in and present and talk about topics that are exciting in the DNN community. And tonight we're going to have DNN Community Edition 9.8.0 preview as our guest tonight. David Poindexter is going to run through and kind of describe to us some of the exciting new features and things that are really important to pay attention to with this important release. And we're going to do a few concurrent working sessions, each of us, of running through an upgrade of this release candidate and doing some testing and making comments and participating in the beta preview process. So this is going to be something that's a lot of fun. We also have a couple of very important new features to point out, the file manager being one of them and the Telerik changes ahead being the other. So we'll dive into that in just a few moments. But we'll begin, as we do every Southern Fried user group meeting, talking community and talking events that are happening in and around the DNN ecosystem and the buzz that's happening. So I will, kind of pass it to the group to talk about a few different things. One of which is that we did have a very exciting blog post put out on the DNN community website. We'll kind of mention that and talk about it in a few minutes, but it's an announcement from Bogdan from DNN Sharp, who has kind of an exciting announcement to make, an exciting offer to share with the DNN community. So I'll kind of kick off by passing to Bogdan and letting him talk here for just a few minutes.
Well, thanks a lot, Ryan. So yeah, yes. I think this was very, very well received. We are happy to see so many people read this article. So there was like 400 views. I think most of any article got on this blog. So very good signals from the community. So basically what we announced last week is that we've opened up an investment campaign for anyone in the DNN community to participate in the future of DNN. And I mean, that's a big story. And I think that's what related to people because, me personally and most of our customers never saw DNN like being just a CMS. There are other systems out there that are designed to be CMS around content. DNN is much more. You can build smarter websites, that have some kind of very powerful back office kind of system. So this was what was our idea, and it all started maybe a couple of years ago when we ran across this hot market called low-code development, right? And looking at that market, we realized that, man, this is what people are doing today with the DNN Sharp modules, right? Only the onboarding part was difficult, getting on DNN, installing DNN without ever having done it before. It's a difficult process, configuring everything, and then figuring out where the modules are on the store, downloading, installing. It's unreasonable to expect something like that from a new user from outside DNN, right? So our idea was first, like, let's take everything that we have, so DNN platform, DNN Sharp modules, but also user base, community, and packaging them together in what is called a platform, right? So that's how Plant an App got invented, and people that already saw Plant an App, they see that it's still DNN, it's still DNN Sharp modules, but it's designed to act as a single product, right? Like you have a single administration interface where you can access the back office, the administration screen of all modules, plus new functionality. So this new functionality that we've added is around this kind of low-code development. So instead of adding modules and creating tables manually, as people used to do it until now, you create entities which generate database tables, they generate forms, grids, still the modules, but also APIs and other things. So we streamline something that would normally take maybe a few days to build an app with all the tables and forms and scripts is now a matter of maybe 20 minutes to create. It's not designed to be like necessarily the end thing that you want, but again, you can continue by adding theming to the site. You can continue by customizing the form, the grids. So it's very, very flexible. And our idea why Plantain app was invented is because we also needed a new brand. You know, DNN Sharp, very good brand, very powerful inside DNN community where it makes sense. But outside DNN Sharp sounds like it's supposed to mean something, you know. We had those conversations, you know. So then we found this brand, which, I mean, we had mixed feedback. Overall, we wanted to represent the idea of application being organic, you know, that it doesn't have to be like a fixed scope project. You always add to it, you always remove from it as businesses evolve on one hand. And on the other hand, we wanted to express this idea of waste, you know, green, avoiding Plantain app, green, avoiding waste, you know, which is development waste, because, you know, people that use DNN Sharp modules versus people that code everything, and we've seen those people, is that you end up having legacy systems. You know, I know banks in Romania that are on DNN 5, you know, because they build all the modules custom, right? Whereas DNN Sharp customers usually do have good migration paths. Sometimes bumpy, you know, especially between major versions, but still is there. You know, in a couple of days, worst case scenario, you are on the latest version and you are there. So that was a bit our reasoning behind this. And low code is very, very hot right now. I share some links. I think I also put some on that blog article. So just 2 weeks ago, a company in low code raised $200 million. You know, it's some huge numbers, you know, that probably in the DNN world sounds even bigger, right? But that speaks of a market that is hot, that we are suited for, right? So that's why we see, and that's why we opened this investment campaign to the DNN, to, instead of saying that we are a CMS, we are doing websites, you know, no, we are doing systems with low code. And it changes the conversation, you know. And I challenge each of you to try that. Like, go tell somebody that you do .NET Nuke, you know. And I mean, the usual response that I get is like, .NET what? You know, this maybe used to be a big thing 10 years ago, if I remember correctly, you know. You're having that discussion. But if you go to someone and say, I'm doing low code, that's the conversation changes. Oh, low code, that's so hot. I heard about those things. That platform that's doing that cool thing, you know, it generates different kind of conversations. But for us as DNN and DNN Sharp community, is the same thing. It's what we've been doing for years, you know, building systems without coding, you know, or coding just when it's needed, just when it's not available out of the box. So yeah, we launched the campaign last week, and we had very good success so far. We reached our minimum target today. So the minimum target was 25K. So thanks everyone. And a lot of those investments, I mean, most of them, around 75%, come from the DNN community. So thanks Ryan, thanks Mark, thanks Hans, Dennis, Ash, a lot of good guys. But our goal is actually to raise a lot more. So this was our first milestone in order to reach the point where Republic starts advertising to their own network of investors, which is 700,000, you know, so it's a big network. So we got to this point, and now we are accelerating. So we'll see a lot of good things coming in the future.
I don't know about everybody else, but I'm pretty impressed in this page alone. I mean, this is like a massive undertaking just to articulate all this. So you guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this is out on republic.co. You can get the link off of the blog that Bogdan posted on the dnncommunity.org. Go out there and check it out and get involved and support one of our fellow DNNers.
Yeah. If you're familiar with other types of systems where you are making an investment, or you are paying for something that is in development or in production or part of a business, you're familiar with that kind of model. So this isn't Kickstarter, this isn't Kiva, but in a similar way, what Republic allows you to do is invest in companies and invest in operations that you believe in, and help support those and help support that growth, and then be connected to it as it continues its growth. So it's a real chance for us to say that we support our DNN community and the people who are part of our DNN community. But this is a real chance to, for anyone within the DNN community and outside of the DNN community, to invest in something that they can see grow, and any growth benefits everyone. So this is mutually beneficial to consider being a part of. So it's something that I know I was very interested in from the first second I heard about it. So very glad to help share this message here tonight.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Thanks for sharing with us, Bob.
All right.
Thanks, lady.
So we then have kind of the buzz of things going on in the area. We had Mitch Sellers posting several new blog posts that were quite interesting. I'll admit that I read the second one that was coming up next more than this one, but there's a good couple of things that are posted that you should read into. David or maybe Daniel, any other points to mention about Mitch's article here?
Well, this one here was actually fantastic. It's a short read, but it really kind of helps share the perspectives of different types of projects within open source and how they work, mainly funded versus volunteer, and really framing DNN as the latter of those two, and encouraging people really to really get involved and contribute. And, that can be in multiple ways. Tonight we're doing one of those, and that's helping to test the release, but you can support other developers in the community that are making contributions on the code level. You can create issues of things that you're doing. You can write blog posts out here. You can, so many ways that you can contribute and be a part of it. But it was a nice kind of overview of the type of open source project that DNN is at this point.
The second one is kind of in line, talking about the things that are coming ahead. If you are connected in with the advisory groups and are really connected in with the coding that's being done with every single new release that's coming out with DNN, you'll know that we are moving towards a lessening dependency for Telerik controls. And there's an article that Mitch put together that really talks about that path and what we've gone through and why. And it's heading to, and he kind of frames and explains that we're heading towards version 10, where we will be without Telerik altogether, and there'll be no reliances on it, and that we're moving in steps towards that. So that's a lot of what we're going to do tonight is talk about the latest release candidates and talk a good bit about Telerik and releasing ourselves from that dependency if the modules that are installed in a DNN instance allow you to do that, or at least being able to document and find out when they don't. So that's kind of what we're going to do tonight. Like David was mentioning, one of the elements of a volunteer open source organization and effort is that you need people doing developments. You need people coming up with ideas. You need lots of different moving parts working together. And one of the moving parts that may not always get the same amount of attention that it should is really the effort and the people behind getting involved doing beta testing and doing early release testing. It's one thing to have a good core group of people doing testing, which is wonderful. But really, the bigger that pool of people doing testing and the wider the variety of sites that they're testing on, the better your release is going to be, because you just naturally trip across more issues that can be resolved earlier rather than resolving them after a release with small minor releases. So I think that's a good segue to kick off our main task for tonight, which is getting into this newest release candidate. So let's kind of talk about what's in this and the people who are involved in it and who contributed. And David, take it away.
Cool deal. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I didn't really go into this article too much here, just simply because it's going to be talked about quite extensively here at this point. I guess let's start out with an overview of what all is in the upcoming release here. As you probably know at this point, 9.8.0 release candidate 1 is out there. It was posted 2 days ago. Thank you, Mr. Veladas, for your continued work in the build area. This is quite the task each time we release. Of course, it's gotten a lot easier, but it's still very noteworthy because he goes through and hand writes all of these release notes every single time, make sure that everybody that's participated in the process are getting the due credit, and also just giving everyone a good, clean, and clear list of bug fixes, enhancements, features, and even developer tools and things like that to be able to reference from, so that you know what to look for. Even when you're testing, being able to know what to test. I mean, this is kind of the basis for our tests, as well as, if you are running, like Bogdan, I'm sure your team goes through and tests these release candidates when they come out, and make sure that your products are working good on these, and make sure there's no unexpected surprises there that you have to make some changes in your code, or if you're an owner of a site and you just want to test out and make sure the upgrade path is going to be smooth for you, make sure all of the modules that you're using, whether they be custom or third-party modules, making sure that they're all just functioning, and also just the core, making sure that there's no gotchas there for your administrative side or your end users on that. I saw something today from Aaron Lopez in our community, and he said something about, I love the way he worded it. It was like UX, as user experience, and then CX, customer experience. We've all probably heard of both of those, but then there's a third, a DX, developer experience. And so, you can come from different perspectives when you approach each of these releases. But let's jump right in and just highlight a few of the things. I won't go through all of it because as you'll see right here on the top, there is a grand total of 84 pull requests that were made for this release, and that's spread across 14 contributors. So first of all, kudos to everybody that participated and contributed in this. I mean, it is fantastic. It's not often. I was live streaming last night with Mitch, and if you didn't see that, check that one out. We kind of go over some of this there as well, and we won't go into as much detail here as we did there, but it's not often that we get so excited about a minor release, but this is kind of like a major minor release, if you will. There's major things in this minor release, but without the breaking changes. So that's really good, or at least we hope not, right? And that's what testing comes down to. We'll check and make sure there's no breaking changes. Okay, so first of all, right at the top, there's quite a bit to do here about the removal, or optional removal, I should say, of Telerik. And this will be an interactive session, by the way. So if anybody has anything to add, especially, Daniel, if you notice something that I'm omitting or something that really makes sense to point out, please jump in and interrupt me and correct me.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to point out was, like, we really automated release production a lot to save time, and we can release super quick and everything. But the release notes, I tried very hard to automate that, and I really feel that they need to be human written so that the average user can understand them. And, a lot of time is spent on that. And I hope you guys love the new release notes.
It's a great format. I'm enjoying it. So I really appreciate the effort that you put into it. It's just one of those unsung hero tasks in my book. But right at the beginning, there's some instruction here and some description. And I would encourage you to read Mitch Seller's blog out on dnncommunity.org about moving beyond Telerik. And he goes into a bit of the history of Telerik and how it even came about really in DNN, and why we found ourselves in this conundrum, but the cliff notes of this are that there's a wrapper essentially that is around all of the Telerik controls that were licensed to be able to be used inside of DNN and for third-party developers to consume as well. But that wrapper and the underlying version of Telerik was stuck in 2013. And that code, well, first of all, a relationship changed, with Telerik, between DNN Corp and Telerik, and no longer was going to be maintained moving forward. And furthermore, they kind of lost the code. So even if they wanted to help, even as a bridge gap kind of solution for us, they couldn't because the code was gone. So we were really just stuck on these really old versions of Telerik, and therefore the vulnerabilities, that rely. And you'll notice one thing, and Mitch said this very clearly last night, we don't typically talk in detail a lot about the security details, of issues and stuff like this in the public manner. But in this case, everything's been so publicly known for quite some time, it's really kind of a moot point. So we're really just pointing to the fact that we're addressing this, right? So right at the beginning of release notes, you'll see some optional instructions for the full removal of Telerik. So if you care anything about security on your site, which everyone should, I highly recommend that you do this. Now, Daniel Veladas and I are going to do a live stream and go through these steps in detail in that live stream and really do it live and make sure that this is good. And we'll definitely change it if it's not, but this has already been tested pretty well. But this is something that you'd want to test. I'll point out that Mitch Sellers released an open source module called Dnn Telerik Identifier. And we may even use that a bit tonight and see some things here with that. But this is essentially a module that you can install, and it will help you identify any potential use of Telerik. This could be, as long as that code can be analyzed, let's say, to determine whether or not there's any references to Telerik. This will hopefully expose all of those and help you really know whether or not you're ready to get rid of everything. And just as an example, Ryan went through on a site, and this is kind of what you get from the results of using that module and putting it on a page. And this is a site that has quite a bit of Telerik dependency on it. So hopefully you won't have quite that many, but this is what you would expect. So it'll reference the actual DLLs in the bin directory. Now, you'll be that have some sort of dependency on Telerik.
Yep, and Mitch's descriptions in the module, both the release pages and in the article, kind of talking about it, describes that this article or this module might not perfectly identify everything. But in the top, you can see ones that are definite matches that it can definitely find and see. And then the unexpected errors section are ones where, because that DLL was built in a way that there's not a manifest included, it can't really tell. So these are suspect ones that may or may not have Telerik dependencies within them. So I can see ones, for instance, that I know, like the ABC PDF generator. I know that one doesn't have any Telerik dependencies, but because of the way that was built, his tool can't identify. So it lists anything that might be questionable as well. So, as with any tool, you have to be, careful. He mentions that even if your tool, once run, shows no dependencies, you still need to be careful, obviously. Have full backups of your site before you're proceeding with any of these instructions, and then test thoroughly after you're done. But this is something that's reversible. You can go through these steps to take out and to disable Telerik completely, and if there are issues, you can put them back in again. So at this point within DNN 9.8, it's an optional manual translation that you're doing here.
And I've seen this question already posted several times in different mediums, but the question comes up, why is it optional? The simple answer to that is that we would have, because it would have been a breaking change if it would have been a forced removal of all Telerik, and that would have required us to go to version 10, and we're just not ready to go to version 10. So rather than delay this possibility of happening, we went ahead and released a minor release and gave instructions for an optional removal of this, because it's just so important and timely, especially with the escalation of sites being attacked by hackers and bots and so forth. So,
and two small notes come to mind also. In the errors on the module here, where you see it says something about assembly, just to clarify, it's not not assembly, but a manifest. It's not talking about DNN manifests. It's really the DLL is missing the information about its dependencies. So these are maybes. And the other thing that comes to mind is why it's optional in 9 is because we wanted to give the option in 9 because 10 will come with a set of breaking changes too. So we wanted to have a safe place in 9 where we could remove Telerik for those who might be affected by the breaking changes in 10.
Great clarifications there. I'll use this report kind of as a segue here too, to point to the one and only reported DNN related DLL here, which is the RAD editor provider. The RAD editor provider is what is powering the digital asset manager. So that was the last big piece that needed to be changed in order to be able to remove Telerik. So that'll come in with the new resource manager here that will give you an optional replacement of that particular module there. You'll see in the new features, there's quite a bit of sub bullets here for the resource manager, and we won't go through all those right now, but this is obviously one of the bigger areas of testing need. And we'll dig into that tonight. So I want to show an overview of this, and then we'll dig into a few of these and look at it. But you can see it was quite the effort. I think Mitch estimated the effort last night somewhere around 500 to 700 hours or something probably put into this. And as an open source community of people that are not getting paid to do it, that's a pretty big effort, you know, for that team. So really you can't thank people enough for their contributions on that. There's quite a few bug fixes that are in here, and we're going to use a few of these just to go through and get a feel for kind of the testing flow and how you can go through these. I think people may be reluctant to get involved, maybe even publicly, you know, with testing. And it may just be because they're like, well, I don't know how to properly test something. Well, it's really not that big of a deal. And you're going to see tonight that it's not that big of a deal. So it's meant to be an encouragement and show you literally how to go through and test some of these and feel good about it. The last section, well, last two sections, one is enhancements. There's quite a bit of enhancements. I'll point out that now there's email provider support. Previously, this was not a provider model type thing. So now you can, you know, in the future, there will be a way to actually, you know, hook in your own mail providers into this. It didn't make it into 9.8.0, but fairly soon there will be the mail kit will be the, well, actually, no, I'm saying that wrong. That was fixed, wasn't it? Daniel? No, we decided to hold it out. Sorry, I'm
No, it's not. There was a little bit of a new class that would have been introduced that we knew would be a breaking change very soon. So we refactored that class so it doesn't become a breaking change. But MailKit was not brought into 9.8.0. It was not yet ready to go.
And
but
also
very soon.
would have been, in essence, a breaking change as well, just simply because of the lack of support for NTLM for those of you that are into that world. So I think that was why it was held out. Another kind of big one here is C# async constructs being able to be used during page rendering. So for you developers, that's a cool thing that's now available. Let's see what else. One cool usability thing that I'm real excited about is the editor that was being used for CSS editing, SQL console, as well as the config manager. So editing the web config files and different config files that are out there. It is now being swapped out by Monaco editor, which for those of you that don't know, that's literally the editor that's used in VS Code. So we get all the power of that right in the browser there. It's a stepping stone type solution at this point. So there's definitely some things on the punch list to be done there to kind of help the experience even more. But that's definitely an area that we'd want to test on. And we already know of one minor issue that's in there. And we're looking for a way to fix that before the official release here. And I should point out too, Will Stroll made a contribution to allow in the config console, now you can edit the robots.txt file. So for those of you that are interested in SEO and really being able to manage that a little more granularly without having to have FTP access or anything like that, now you can edit that robots.txt file immediately in the editor there. And let me see, the only other one I really kind of wanted to point out was a few developer experience contributions here. We won't go through all these in detail, but there is some continuing additional support being brought in for dependency injection. In this case, the event logger. I think that's a pretty big one there, as well as for, I'm not sure exactly what this one is. Daniel, maybe you know, the Serialization Manager.
It's an interface for serialization management.
Oh, just adding the interface. Okay, for that.
Is that a good answer?
Yeah, that sounds good. It sounded like you knew what you were talking about. And then I think it was enabled for the iService route mapper as well there. So
one important one also here is the number one. We brought the CK Editor provider under our main repository, so it's no longer a separate repository. There was a little bit of a cleanup on it, and it follows our main build process, which helps in two big areas. One are changes that affect both the platform and the provider, and the other one is issue management, because it was a little bit messy to have to deal with both, as it was with admin experience. So the move of admin experience was awesome, and this move should be awesome also to ease up on contributions on that area.
And Daniel, that was also an update to the newer version, or was that just simply bringing in-house the current version that was recently
just bringing it in-house and a little bit of a code cleanup to follow our standards, remove some deprecated stuff, and adjust to our code styling and little things that don't change any features.
Now, if we can just find a way to actually fix everything with CK Editor, that would be awesome, right? But
just a new version would help.
But it will make it easy to do so.
Yeah, make it easier.
Easier.
It's definitely in context now instead of being some rogue repo that we pull in and consume. So it's been great to see that. Yeah, I think that's probably, yeah, there's so much in here to unpack. I don't want to spend too much time just going over highlights here, but let's dig right in and let's actually.
And maybe just highlight the totals. We got, what was it, 84 pull requests?
Yeah, 84 total pull requests, over 14 contributors. So,
and a lot of new contributors.
That is true. And, you know, and I actually, I have to put this out, I was so excited to see this. I've seen 2 contributions just last night and today by somebody that's never contributed, but he's been in our community for a long time, and really excited to see that people are excited to get involved and do this. I think for so long, you know, that, and some of you that have been around for a while probably can remember this, and I apologize, my dog's going to go crazy here. But there was a time where contributions may sit there for a long time, and I probably shouldn't even say how long. Some of them actually sit there and then they got deleted. Over 500 of them got deleted at one point. You know, we're not in that time anymore. So when you want to contribute, know that it's going to be looked at, it's going to be reviewed, and if it makes sense, it's going to be merged in. And you might even get some guidance along the way and learn some things. So I think Daniel Vlogs, you would attest to, it's really cool to tackle one of these things because you learn so much in the process, and you're kind of learning how DNN is working in certain areas. And the more of these that you do, the more you learn, which can help you in your product development or custom modules or whatever it is that you're doing. You can just really unpack a lot of the features. Okay.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that because I had pull requests hanging for a year, never merged and just closed without reason. And we're really in a much better state now. And if you look at the repository right now, there's 11 pull requests, and the few that are pending, they are being discussed and they are being worked on, and they're gonna get merged. It's really rare that something stays there without any justifiable reason. We are very active in taking contributions in.
Exactly. Well, let's hop over and let's jump into our first test scenario. So I did mention this is going to be really interactive, so feel free to just jump in, and let me admit this other person that just joined. And I encourage you also, especially if you have multiple monitors and stuff, just go and start testing some of these things on your own as we go through them, and you kind of get the hang of it yourself, because this can be done by everyone, and the idea is for everybody to get involved. So rather than just watching me. But what we'll do is I'm going to flip over to a Windows VM here so that I can actually run DNN. And I'm going to open up MV QuickSight just to help with the install process. We're just going to go through a basic install right at the beginning. Once we do that, then we'll be able to review visually some of the new things that are in there. If you have enabled the feature in here, and you can do it through QuickSight settings, MV QuickSight settings here, if you have the show release candidates checked, it'll show when there is release candidates available up here. So I've chosen the release candidate. I've actually already downloaded just to save a little bit of time, and I'll go next. And I want to use the local package, so I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to give this a name here. We'll call it 9.8 RC1. And we'll go next. And yes, I want to create that folder. Yes, that's a good database name for me. I'll use Windows Authentication. And we'll let this go ahead and unpack it and install DNN. And I want to mention, I mean, you can go through a manual install process, but this certainly speeds things up when you're testing fresh installs. And there's nothing that MV QuickSight is doing that's going to mess up those test results. It's really just creating your environment and doing a lot of stuff that would otherwise take you, 20 minutes to do manually. We'll do it in less than one.
And I've put the link to this tool in the chat because I see a lot of new faces. So some people might not know what NV QuickSight is, and the link is there to download the tool, which is really useful to speed up installing DNN.
Okay, so we're unpacked and ready to go. We'll just visit the site. That should fire up a browser for us and take us through the actual DNN install process. Take just a second to pull it up. Now, Daniel, I didn't see that in the chat. Did you put it in the chat for the Zoom call? Or
oh, I'm sorry. I didn't put it to everyone. Okay, I'm gonna put it back.
You must have sent it to some special person privately.
That would be me.
Exactly. Bogdan can download it.
Nice. Okay, so we're good to go here. I'm going to put in a password so that, just this simple test is good to just see if the install process works good. So we're going to do that. We'll call this one DNN 09.8.0, and I'll do RC1 just so that I can tell what's going on. I'll do a default template, but you might want to go through and test a blank template as well. I'll do this one just so that we see something when we go in there. Now, one big thing that we're kind of, oops, that did not. Okay, there we go. One big thing that you might notice that's different about the install process, and I forgot to kind of point this out when we're going through it, but you no longer see the checkbox for the improvement program, whatever that is. We don't really fully know where that was going and exactly what it was being used for and all that. So we yanked it out and it's gone. I think Mitch Sellers made that contribution. So that's good to see that gone. And honestly, I don't even think that environment, wherever it was, and I don't even know if anybody's even there, even able
was receiving.
to access it. So it was bringing no value to the platform or the end user experience. There's no information there that we could glean and get any kind of improvement type metrics or anything like that we could do. So it's gone. So that's nice and clean here now. We could flip over into custom, but that should just show what we put in the MV QuickSight, because MV QuickSight does modify the web config just to make sure that we have that information by default in there. And we'll click continue and we'll watch it install. Hopefully, knock on wood, we'll be good to go. And I'm always interested in seeing the time that it takes to install.
We don't usually toot our own horn, but just to talk about NV QuickSight, that's our very own David Poindexter work. And if you love the tool, be sure to sponsor him.
Oh, thank you, Daniel. I'll send you a check later. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I get a commission. Be sure to sponsor him because I get a commission from that. But seriously, it's an awesome tool. I love it. And it's a really, really nice free tool that was made for free. And if you love it, make sure if you can afford it, to contribute.
Yeah, that's awesome. While we're waiting on this to install, I'd like to encourage everybody to, take a look at, if you haven't, find the developers that are working in the communities that you're involved in, be that DNN or elsewhere. If it's an open source kind of environment, go and find them out on GitHub, and you can go to their, if they have signed up, you can sponsor them. And it's a cool platform that GitHub has for contributing to those, and just, buying them a cup of coffee or something, or a dinner, just to say thank you. It's amazing how long that will fuel a developer, just knowing that it's appreciated what they're doing. Okay, so we're ready to go. We'll view the website and take a look at DNN 9.8.0. Is everybody excited? Come on, show a little bit of excitement.
Absolutely. Woo, woo, woo.
There you go. Oh, my dog got excited, so he's coming over here to get a little bit of loving.
He's excited about 9.8.
Yeah, exactly. You excited, buddy? Yep. Now, this is to be expected. The very first load here, after we do this, it'll have to copy everything over to the global assembly cache and all that good stuff. So here we are. We're rocking and rolling. So far, this is looking good. I don't see anything. One thing I should have done probably is open up my inspector. So when you're testing things, especially if it's front end type stuff, you might want to open up your dev tools by right clicking on the page and going to inspect. And then you can open the console tab over here and see if anything over here shows. If you see red, that's probably not a good thing that's going on. So that would help in whenever you do see something funky going on, you could report that, hey, I saw this error in the console that shows up. So, and we'll show you a few other tricks as we go through here as well. Let's head on over. I know everybody wants to see the resource manager, but I'm gonna hold off on that one for just a second. Let's go and look at the editors real quick, because that's one of the big visual things. Let's see, let's go over to the CSS editor. And we should expect to see the new shiny editor show up. Now it did. You may say, okay, well, big deal, it's black. Well, one of the things that this one does is it actually automatically detects your system preferences for dark or light theme, and it will show that theme of the editor. Now my system is set to dark, so it is detecting that and setting this to dark. But if you had light in your Windows settings, it would show the light version of this theme. Now we don't see much here, and we won't be able to see a whole lot going on, but if you want to see some really cool stuff, let's just go ahead and put some basic CSS in here. So let's just come up with something like .my class, and I'll probably make this a little bit bigger. Oh, why don't we just see what the editor will do for making things bigger? So I'll go to my command palette here. I could hit F1 if I wanted to, and I'll type zoom. Yeah, we'll zoom in, make it, oops, I zoomed in instead of zoom. Oops, zoom in, and that is not responding. So I want to kind of take note of that, but check that out. As soon as I type that class name and I hit the space bar, I've got autocomplete and in kind of an IntelliSense, if you will, here. So I can open up my braces here and do something that I would expect. Start typing color. Oh, there's color. Yeah, let's set color, to something. Oh, let's see. I can see, oops, and it automatically put that in there. I probably should zoom in a little bit, but oh, there's the colors that I can do and do that. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but there's a ton going on in here that you can do. If you hover over this, check it out, you get your color picker, that kind of stuff. So you can imagine pretty much anything that you can do in Visual Studio Code, you can do in here. Let's go ahead and load the default CSS here, which should pull in our default CSS there. And there it is. And so you can see a little bit more detail of what could be in there and so forth. So you've got this kind of a drag thing over here that gets you there quicker. And also you can see any errors in your code. So this is a CSS context. So if you had any errors in the CSS, like we had something like asdiff, whatever, then that should be a little bit of a problem. So we'll get a squiggly and we can peek the problem and see what's going on. Oh, no property known as asdif. So pretty cool stuff. All right, so that's looking pretty good. And we can make a change here and save it. Well, heck, we'll just save the bad stuff. And then we'll reload the page, make sure it's still there.
Another very cool thing is it has Mdn links to properties. So let's say you use, I don't know, background color or something. You have a link that explains what's supported directly on MDM website. It's really, really cool.
It is really cool. So we did that. Let's restore the default again and see if it gets rid of that. Yep, got rid of it. So that's looking pretty good. There's so much you can do in here. We could spend the whole session just looking at this editor, but that's looking pretty good. So that's what you can expect from this custom CSS editor. Let's go over quickly to the config manager. And we know that there's a new feature in here for editing the robots.txt file. So let's take a look at that and see if Will Stroll did a good job there. Oh, there it is. Now it's showing up in our drop-down list. So we'll load that up. Now you're not going to get all that fancy stuff in a text file because, well, it's a text file and there's no code really associated with it, but at least you can edit this file and make some changes to it and save them. In more detailed testing, we'd probably want to make a change to this, and well, let's just go ahead and do it. Let's just put asdif in there. We'll save it and make sure that this doesn't throw any errors over here on the right-hand side. Okay, I didn't see any errors. So let's change to another file. Let's go to our web config file. That's looking pretty good. Now this has XML support here. So you've actually got quite a bit of power here. How many of you used to love the way that you had to search the web config file before and try to find things? So now I've got my cursor in there. I'm just going to use Control F here. I've got find right in here. So if I really wanted to find the HTTP runtime or something, there it is. I've got one instance of it. I mean, heck, you can even do find and replace of things. So if you know that you want to, change everywhere where it says debug or something to don't debug or what, I mean, something stupid like that, you can do that and replace all. So you've really got the power of VS Code in here. So that's pretty cool.
And it supports also regular expressions for those more advanced search and replace. You don't have to take the file in an advanced editor and save it back. It's right there.
That's great. So let's see if our change to the robots.txt file persisted. So I'll load it back up. Yep, there it is. There's my asdif in there. Obviously, that's not a good thing to put in the robots.txt. So I'll save that back. Yeah, so you can edit all these other files. You can even do the merge script things. So if you wanted to upload your merge script in here and execute a merge for those config files, an XML merge, you could do that. And that should probably be tested as well. We'll go quickly over to the SQL console. Now this one, we were honestly a little bit, check that out. We just found a bug.
Reload the page.
Yep, it'll show when you reload the page, but I'm not sure. I've never seen that, Daniel. Switching back and forth between those, the editor doesn't even show up. Oh, there it is. Interesting. So that is one of the, well, I would say that this one was known, but this one wasn't known because there wasn't a little teeny black box up there. I would have expected to see a little teeny black box up there if it was not setting the width and height of it, because that is done in JavaScript. And because it's in the persona bar, it may not have been firing the load of that page, but that was kind of odd there. That's our first time visiting that. So I would have expected that to show up here. So if I was doing testing here, and really going through details and stuff like that, I would probably try to recreate that again and make sure that I wrote down the exact steps that it takes to get that undesired result. So this is one of the things that you're going to want to do when you're testing, because like if you report it and say, hey, there's something's wrong with the SQL console, editor's not loading, well, that doesn't really help too much. I mean, it's good to know that there's an issue, but it doesn't really help us to figure out what's going on,
This is really the most important thing to take about reporting issues. For a developer to pick it up, you have to do as if you would explain it to a kid. Really, how do you make it accurately happen? When you have that, anybody interested is going to pick it up and go at it and fix it. It's really the hardest part is, well, it doesn't happen on my machine, so I can't do anything. Really, if you can be very specific, that's the best chances of getting a quick fix.
And David, we are going to kind of do that. I know that we've done other SoFri meetings where we've gone into GitHub and we've reported issues or we've reported things. You might be holding them all to the end, or you might be writing up different information. But are we going to show that tonight, or should we try and link and reference people to previous SoFri events and videos where they can see how easy it is for them to post in those type of things?
Yeah, I definitely want to show how to post an issue. I won't go through the detail of every single one of these. I really just want to touch on the different methods, kind of for testing and show really how easy. We're jumping all around now because I wanted to kind of do a preview of the new features and stuff in DNN, but we'll come back and go through a specific issue here in a minute and do it. We just happened to run into one that I didn't expect we would run into. So, you would literally write a description of what just happened, but then go step one, open, log in as super user. Step two, we open CSS Editor, custom CSS in the persona bar. And then we made a change. You don't have to go too far back, but you want to try to recreate it again locally before you actually report it, just to make sure that those exact steps do indeed result in the undesired results. So that literally we're asking for every little step so that we can really reproduce it and go, oh, okay, well, all right, let's see what code is related to those actions and go from there. Okay, so we won't go into detail on that one, but I'm definitely making a note of it to come back to it later. Let's see, a lot of bug fixes and stuff like that, but let's go into the resource manager. Let's create a new page so that we can show this. We'll add a page here, and I'll make this a little bit bigger since this particular module is wider. We'll do this one, call it resource manager maybe. And we'll just add this. Now, obviously that doesn't need to be exposed to all users. So, and by the way, you'd probably want to put that on the actual page for the site assets and the global assets here. Anyways, actually, let's just do that. And let me not show the wrong way. I'll show the right way here. So we'll go over to site assets and load that. And we'll see the digital asset manager in there, but let's go ahead and we'll first want to install the resource manager module, because remember, this is an optional asset manager. So, you're going to want to, it doesn't show up automatically. So we'll go into extensions and look in available extensions, and it should show up right here. Resource manager. And by the way, don't get any bright ideas. This is not something that you can use on a previous version of DNN. This is only for 9.8 because it does require things that are in 9.8 in order for it to even work. So we'll install this, make sure that this install goes smooth. So we're kind of testing here, at this point, and making sure that the install of this, we just tested another bug fix. When I click the accept license, I don't know how many of you noticed, but this box usually jumps over to the left every time you check it, and you go, oh, that's weird, and then you go on because you need to install the module. Well, somebody finally fixed that, so thanks. Let's see. It's funny.
Thank you.
I've heard a few people say, well, now I don't know if it's really checked or not because it didn't move. Okay, we're looking pretty good here on this one, and we'll just say okay. And now it should show up in this list here once it reloads. Okay, if we scroll down, yep, there it is, resource manager. So now we should be able to add it to this page. So let's go into edit mode. Of course, we installed a new module that has a DLL, so it's going to have to kind of recycle here. Here we go. All right. So we'll click add module and we'll type in resource to sort it. There we go. Plus, hopefully we'll get a little floaty thing that we can actually drag. Yep, we did. And I accidentally dragged it right onto that. So then it showed down here, but I didn't mean to do that. So I'm gonna put this on top. Okay, so here is the new, yep, because I told it to go up top. It's gonna reload. Here is the new one. So it's kind of good to test it right with the old one because you can kind of compare here and see what may or may not be there or what shows in a different way. But ultimately, you know, in the situation where you're going to go down the path of removing Telerik and you want to use this instead of the old digital asset manager, you're going to want to delete this off the page and then, you know, go through the steps to remove Telerik. Okay, so highlights of this. First of all, this was somewhat of an inherited project. So the overall design and experience here was, you know, gifted, if you will, and we already want to improve this. So there are some known things that, you know, we already don't love about it. You know, you can imagine a site with thousands and thousands of folders and files. This is going to be a little bit unruly. Ryan, I see the look on your face.
Yeah, I tell you what, let me spin that just a little bit because I'm going to say the exact same things, but just a little differently. We were fortunate to help move us along in this process to receive a starter block of code that got us started with a Telerik free file manager. This is just the beginning. This is our opportunities to take this interface, which many of us have already experienced before, and move beyond the limitations that have been present in this interface for years and make it much better. So here, really consider this as an initial starting point. We know that there are certain features that are not present within this interface, but again, this is really about moving away from this Telerik dependency. After this, what we will be able to do now is move freely forward to vastly improve this interface. And already there are a number of opportunities for us to make improvements. For right now, if you're able to get away with a smaller site with smaller folder sets and smaller numbers of files, then this is going to be certainly adequate. If you are working within a site that has hundreds of folders and hundreds of stacks of nesting folders, files in which the file names are desperately important for you to read through, then perhaps you need to keep around the old file manager for a while. But for many of us who are chomping at the bit to have this available, this is an excellent opportunity. So we're all, you know, looking forward to taking this as it is and knowing that it can improve from here.
Thank you, Ryan.
And to expand on that, I don't want to speak for everybody, but on my target, improvements that I would like to work in the future would be a list view, not cutting the pictures in a circle because it doesn't always make sense, responsiveness, accessibility, mobile support, touch support are all things in my head I would like to work on in the near future.
We can all admit that many of the things that come from, you know, the same source of where this came from, they look for pretty, but they don't actually contemplate how it's used on a daily basis. This isn't, you know, doesn't have a lot of the best features for daily, heavy, real world usage. It just looks pretty on the screenshot. So it will be improved over time, no question about it.
So one of the things, and you know, we could spend quite a bit of time in here, and we won't do that. But just at a high level, adding assets to a folder, pretty easy to do. Drag and drop experience there. Adding a folder is pretty easy to do within there. Some of the things like managing the folder types are now up here, so this actually makes it a little bit easier to add a new folder type. So if you do have, for instance, a connector configured for Azure, then you could add that folder type here just as easily, and that does work right out of the box. Also, and Daniel, feel free to highlight anything you want to highlight, but I was going to show the move as well here, being able to copy and move or move items from one place.
Yeah, right now it's move only. We talked about copy and move, but copy you could download and re-upload. It's not a big issue. Move was absolutely necessary because if you have secure folders, you cannot just delete and put it because it's going to change the links. So this move should allow it to keep the same link. Now, if you're moving regular files, your links will be invalid anyway. So just be aware of that. And maybe the other little thing I want to make sure we don't forget relating to folder providers, there's a little bit of a hidden feature that you need to put the page in edit mode to go to the module action menu. And in there, you will oh, I'm sorry, I moved it out of there. I'm sorry, it's in manage folder types. So if you do manage folder types, you're gonna have one web forms control, and we had to implement it this way because folder providers, they give their settings as a web form control in the manifest. So this is the only piece that's web forms. Everything else is web API stuff and front end.
Yep, and this should be familiar to you from before. It's just now it's in a pop-up here for you to be able to handle. But you can see where you can choose an Azure folder provider or any other folder provider that you have configured there, and add that.
If you just select the Azure one, you should too late. But you should see the actual web forms control that's provided by that provider. In other words, so to not make it a breaking change, we have to keep it that way.
So you've seen move, you've seen that search works just great. It's actually a wildcard search. So I would say this is one area that's actually a little better than before because I'm not hitting enter or anything. It's as I type. So if I were to look for, the Twitter icon, as soon as I type 3 letters, it will go and find that. And this is recursive through the entire site. Now, performance wise, we don't know exactly what's going to happen when you get, thousands upon thousands of nested files and so forth there, but it should be pretty fast because it loads everything up front, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what your perspective is on that. And over here on the left is your refreshing, syncing this folder and sync folder and subfolders. Your typical navigation here is going to be the breadcrumb here or this drop down to navigate those. And you can search within here as well. So if you are looking for the, oops, and I did not mean to do that. May have just found a bug here. Or do I have to type the whole thing?
You don't have a users folder, do you?
Oh, I probably don't. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. You do have a users folder.
Oh, yeah, that's
yeah, you might. Maybe if you go back home and do the search again. Is that how it's implemented?
Yeah, well, we just found something.
You might have found something. Yeah.
Put this one down. We don't see any errors over in the console, but this one here is pretty easy to. It seems to be doing it every single time. So search folder looks like it needs a little bit of TLC. So we found something here. So that one we can go and create an issue. I wasn't going to do it at this point, but I mean, I guess that's probably as good a time as any to go over and show how to actually submit an issue on GitHub. So we'll go over to github.com/DNN software/DNN.platform. I won't submit it now because I want to kind of write that up and give a little bit of details, but I want to show you where to go to do this just in case you're not familiar with this. You would need a GitHub account. It's free to set up. So if you are not logged in, it'll prompt you to do that. In order to be able to submit an issue, you have to have a user. But if we go over to the issues tab here on DNN, we can see a new issue button here. And we can click that. And in this case, this would be a bug report. So we'll choose that option and we'll do get started. And it's going to pre-populate some stuff for us here. So you would give a nice description of, search folders in new resource manager. appears to be broken or something like that. This is some information that lets you know that you're going to have to follow the guidelines for contributing. This can just be removed from it. And this is a heading for description of bugs. So you'd want to put a description of the bug in here. And I won't go through all this right now, but there's headings, and then you know, this is in Markdown. For those of you not familiar with Markdown, don't be too scared of that.
If you click on preview, maybe people would have an idea of what that actually renders to. So the pound makes it kind of a section.
Yep. So what you want to do is, you know, and this is where we're talking about steps to reproduce, you know, this one's going to be pretty easy to write up because it's go to page that has the resource manager on it and try to search in the search folder drop down there. So we could put that in there. Any kind of, you know, screenshots are helpful, especially when something hard to describe via text. You know, it's good to put a little screenshot in there, which I would probably do by just capturing, in this case, probably do something along the lines of searching for images folder, which is should be on every one. And I'll just screenshot this right here, you know, so that whoever's looking at that issue would be able to see context of it. And I'd probably put in a screenshot of this as well. So the base root, you know, state of it is known. And then after you get finished with that, all you do is click submit issue. And there's some other things down here. If it was browser specific or what release, you'll definitely want to mark an X in, like this is the release candidate. So you'd want to replace that space with an X there. And that renders over here like a little checkbox here. Now I'm in a dark mode, so you may not be able to see that very well, but that's the way that works. So hopefully that makes sense. I mean, reporting an issue is not really that big of a deal. Don't be too, you know, thrown off by all the rules or formatting and stuff like that here. You know, just try to put yourself in the developer's shoes and give them as much information as possible so they can look into that. Okay. Are there any other major visual pieces that you can think of that we need to show here before we get into an actual test script?
Yes, module settings on this module. So this module was made as a regular module. It's not hard-coded to work only in the persona bar. And the previous one supported groups and user mode, which this one also should support. This is an area of testing that would be welcome if people use it in that context. But you have a little mode dropdown, and if you use the old module in that context, it would be nice to have some test results for people who use that.
Yeah, so anybody that's using site groups or, you know, or even the social features really in there is where this is going to come into play. I personally don't have any of those kind of implementations, so I don't know too much about that. But if you do those type of setups, then that would be a good area to test, because my guess is there won't be a whole lot of people touching this hidden gem, if you will, that's in here.
And I know for me, I don't have any test bed that uses it. So if you find any issues in that environment, in the steps to reproduce, please include how to set up the group and put the module in. Yeah. Like really for a newcomer to social features would be really helpful if you find bugs and be clear about how to make it happen.
I've got some with site groups. I'll tackle it after the meeting.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be really good, because while it was tested, it probably was not as thoroughly, you know, tested as it could be in real life scenarios. So thanks for pointing that out, Daniel. Beyond the resource manager, are there any other major visual things that we need to point out? I think most of it's pretty much covered by. So let's go into, if you think of something, just let me know and we'll dig into it. But I've printed out, one of the things I like to do is just print out the release notes, and then I go through and just mark the ones that I want to touch on. And I've actually written a little bit of some test scripts, just rudimentary test scripts, if you will, over here. I'll just pull them onto the screen just because I can, if I can get back into Mac, because I've got this open in Word and Mac. So I took the very first one here. Let's see. Actually, let's just go to the let's go to, we already kind of tested this one, but this was the one about the accept license. So this is what your typical steps might look like. You know, install an extension. Did the accept license checkbox move after checking it? And, you know, just to kind of put this in perspective, you're looking at the release notes, right? And these are the release notes. So if I go in here and I find that particular one, let's see, where was it? I'm looking for the accept license. I'm not seeing it. Oh, I deleted it off of here. Okay, that's funny. Let's go back over to the release notes, the actual release notes. Go to releases. Okay, let's find that particular one. Yeah, here it is. So find a styling or fixed a styling issue for checked accept license checkbox in extension installer. Granted, that is probably not written very well for you to know exactly what's going on. So, you know, if that's not clear what that issue was that got fixed, you can click on the actual PR that was submitted, the pull request that was submitted to fix that and get a little bit more context. So this is the actual pull request that, oh, there happens to be a screenshot here. Oh, ooh, that really helps. You know, so sometimes you'll find that on the pull requests to know exactly what was going on. You know, this shows that it should stay here. If I were to click on the original issues, like a lot of these pull requests will have some keyword like fixes or closes or resolves some number. Well, this is the original issue that was created. So the typical flow is going to be an issue is created and then a pull request is submitted to fix that issue. So you could go to the original issue as well and get a little bit more context, because a lot of times the real details there. Now, this issue was submitted by Will Stroll, and he did a great job at writing this up. So this is a really good example of how to submit an issue. The only thing that probably could have made this better is just some screenshots or something, but it was pretty straightforward, so it didn't need it. So that's kind of the flow of how you would want to tackle these, is pick out one from the release notes. Oops, I did not mean to jump there. That you want to do, read it, see if it makes sense, you know, to you. If it makes sense, you can go ahead and start testing. If not, look at the PR and then follow that PR back to the original issue that is there, and you can get more context and see, okay, what is it that I need to test here? Because I see this basic description, but it doesn't make sense to me. So, you know, I translated that into a little bit more human readable here and said, okay, install an extension. Did the accept license checkbox move after checking it? Because that's really the question here. Is it fixed? So we went through that and it did stick. So the behavior that was described is validated here. So that passed with flying colors, right? So that's kind of how you would want to go through some of these. Let's take one that's a little bit more involved. May not be as clear. Fixed an issue where newly created subfolder was not shown if the parent folder name starts with 0. Huh? Okay. Okay, so you're saying we have to
Sounds important though. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty well written, but it's like, okay, but like what context are we in here? A folder. Wait, okay, it's probably talking about the digital asset manager, you know, for that. That's where you would create folders. So, okay, that's cool. Well, I'm going to dig into it. So I'm going to go to the pull request that was here, and I'll open this in a new window so I don't have problems finding the release notes again. And here's a great example of a pull request that doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of information in it, but it does say, trimming the prefix 0 from the folder name creates a folder with different name compared to the user provided name, and the subfolder is also not created in the user provided folder. Okay, I'm kind of lost. Like, what is it that's going on here? This is kind of him describing what he did in code to resolve the issue. So it's not really meant for a testing scenario, right? So I need to find a little bit more information. So I'm going to go, and this one says fixes this issue. So let me go back and look at that issue. So I'll click that, open it up, a new tab. Here we go. Newly created subfolder not shown if the parent folder starts with 0. Okay, here's the steps to reproduce. Okay, log in as host user. Okay, so we're logged in as host user, check. Navigate. So actually this becomes my test script. You see how this is kind of working now, because if they did a good job at writing the issue, in this case they did, then this becomes my test script to see if the new behavior is in fact the expected behavior that was documented here. Yeah. So,
yeah, and it's important for both testing and for a developer, because that's exactly the same thing you're going to do to debug it. So it's really the most important block of an issue is clear steps to reproduce, really, really simple and clear and explicit.
So what we'll want to do is navigate to content assets, raggy. What does that mean? Content. Oh, he's talking about the persona bar. Okay, so these are named settings, managed content. Well, there's no assets. All right. So what is the problem here? Well, it just happens to be that this was something that was related to evoke. Okay. So sometimes you have to put on the hat of, okay, what would this mean in DNN? Oh, the next step says click on global assets. Okay, I know what that is. It's just in a different location in DNN platform than it is in evoke, right? So we'll go over here, global assets, it's under manage. All right, we're good now. So let's go to that. That'll be the digital asset manager again, but this will be from a host level, super user level up. So now what's the next step? We clicked on that. All right, let's click on add folder, and we'll provide name 01-test. So I'll copy that into my clipboard here. We're going to click save. So we need to add a folder, I guess from the root. He didn't specify, so we'll just do that. Create a folder, and I'm going to paste what I copied there. So this is a folder name, just to follow the flow here. It starts with 0, and that was really the problem from the beginning. So we'll just do that. It did not specify what type of folder, so we're going to assume that that's a standard folder. All right, we'll go save. All right, there's the folder. We're good there. So we clicked save. Now click on 01-test. All right, we're going to do that. I'm going to click on it. We're good. We're inside the folder. Now click on, or no, I'm sorry, click on add folder and provide a subfolder. Okay, I think literally wants to name it subfolder. So I'm going to copy that into my clipboard. So we'll do a new folder, and I will paste that in. So now we have a subfolder under a folder that starts with the number 0 instead of a letter. All right. So now the current behavior before was subfolder is not displayed under parent folder. Okay. I think he's probably talking about over here in the left. Okay, it is displayed. So let's see if that was the expected behavior. Subfolder should be displayed under parent folder. Yep, it does. So just for the heck of it, I'll refresh, make sure that that is still the case. Now it gets resorted, and it's still showing. So that one just passed with flying colors. So one thing I'll point out here, this is a successful test. But how do we let somebody know that was a successful test? So now I'd like to introduce you, if you don't already know, about several different mediums in which you can let people know what your results were. And I probably should just drag over my Slack here. And that if you're on Slack, I'll pull this over here. Okay, so ignore my 5,000 Slack workspaces here, but if you haven't yet, you might want to get onto openhelp.slack.com. And this is a great Slack channel just to get general help and all that as well. And this is something that Addison Oliveira, hello, created in the beginning to just start DNN help on Fridays, you know, so it kind of became a thing every Friday. People would just help each other out. Well, it's evolved into, heck, you go here if you need help anytime, you know, and there's usually somebody there that's going to be able to at least commentate on what your issue is, if not, you know, help you solve it right away. Anyways, I digress. In here, we created a testing channel, and this is a great place to report your testing experiences. Now, nothing's in here right now. And actually, how many saw this post in here and showed up to the meetup tonight because you saw this post in here? Oh, yeah, can't see everybody, but I know some of you probably came because of this. That's one place that you could post them. I'll show something in there's also, if you're on the technology Slack workspace, which is DNN TAG, which is Technology Advisory Group, .slack.com. This is where all the geeks live, you know, that are working on the platform and stuff like that. But there is also a testing. Hi, Daniel. Thanks for waving at me there. There is a testing channel here as well. Oh, he just waved again. Hi, Daniel. So, oh, Clint just laughed. Thanks. Hello. What you'll see here is like somebody that's already done some testing. And I mean, Jeremy Ferentz did a great job here of just making bullet points of things that he went through and tested and all that. You may say, well, I mean, it's just a Slack channel, but it's at least some sort of validation that this thing worked or didn't work. So if something's working and 2 people or 3 people have said, yep, it's working great, then letting people know that that's working great will save somebody else from even going down and testing that. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go and test it yourself and all that if you really want to, or that's an area that you use a lot or something, you probably should test it just for your own confirmation and feeling on that. But this is a great place to report it as well. You can also, you know, obviously in the case where it didn't pass a scenario, you know, that you still see an issue or a different issue that's in that same area that may be a side effect of this fix, which does happen from time to time. You fix one thing and you break another thing in the process and didn't even realize it because the developer was so focused on fixing that issue that they didn't think that, oh gosh, that could impact this other thing over here. In that case, you know, you're obviously going to go to GitHub to report the issue. But if you're kind of like, well, I experienced this, but I can't do that every single time, like it's not consistent, something funky's going on, this is a great place to come out and talk about that, ask other people to check the same thing. Hey, here's the steps that I took. It works sometimes, sometimes it doesn't work. What do you think? And somebody else might have an idea for how to do that in a way to really refine it and get it down to a clearly repeatable steps that isolates the issue. So you might want to do something like that before going and reporting the issue. It kind of depends on how much time you have and, you know, and all that, how sensitive it is, you know, for you and all that. So, yeah, so those are 2 great places to do that. You can also dialogue on DNN Connect group on Facebook. So if you don't know about that, you can go out to Facebook and search DNN Connect group, and that's a good place to dialogue as well. Again, that's good for, hey, I'm doing this and it doesn't do it every single time, or I'm trying to test this and I don't understand how to test it. You need a little bit of help on the testing or something. You're really interested in that area or that fix or that enhancement, but you can't quite understand what to do. There's people here that'll help you through that as well. So is that clear on kind of the flow here of how to go through some of this stuff? I hope that's helpful. I know it's probably elementary to a lot of you out there, but I think it demystifies things a little bit because may think, well, I don't know how to really test. Well, it's not that hard. You really just kind of have to follow it back, try to understand what it is that you're trying to test to start with, and you know, just look at it and try to figure it out. You know, sometimes it's easier than others. Now, I picked a hard one there a bit to understand on purpose. Some of these are super easy, you know, to look at, but I would encourage each of you to, you know, get involved in testing in some shape, form, or fashion. I mean, really just testing that one little issue and reporting back your success or failures, you know, in that are extremely beneficial. If nothing else, confirmation that, hey, that's handled. Daniel, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, scratch your own itch. If you are very concerned with localization, make sure you test a lot with localization. If you're very concerned with social features, focus on that, because they're less. Try to not test, well, not try to not test, but try to not test only the defaults. You know, try to go crazy, do the things that are less common, because during development, we always kind of go with the defaults and a clean install. So we do test upgrades, we do test common stuff, but if you have a focused area of expertise, your testing is very welcome, because maybe there's less people doing that kind of testing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, we focused so much on the release notes and the issues that are in there. Yes, test those, but also don't forget to do the basic stuff here too. Like, it's amazing how much just adding a user and adding them to a role and deleting the user and adding a page and deleting a page and things like that, that actually touches a lot of pieces of the core code. So, you know, if you've got your console open here and you go through and do some of that stuff, it'll really help to test the basics, you know, as well.
And a lot of the, I'm saying in the previous year, the recent things that we were not expecting to be a breaking change, because it's never something we want, it's by mistake that they happen, were either with third-party modules or upgrades. So it's a very important area of focus for testing. If you have real sites that have a staging that you could grab a copy and test an upgrade on it, and is everything working fine? If you're a third-party module developer, we want your input. Make sure your modules don't break accidentally. Most of the errors we had in the past were in these two areas, upgrades and third-party modules. So it's very, very welcome if we can get a thumbs up on those.
Those are great too. Going into admin logs and seeing if you see any errors that show up in here. I've got one here. Let's see what that is. That's one that's kind of an annoying one that happens from time to time, you know, in here, but you may find something that's very enlightening in here that says, oh, I remember I was trying to do that a few minutes ago. And this can actually help you isolate your steps too, you know, and find more details to be able to submit in the issue itself as well. You won't always have a log entry in here when something goes wrong. But like in the case of the editor not loading on the SQL console, you know, page we went to, yeah, there's nothing in the console over here. There was nothing in the admin logs. And it's probably something just on the front end that's not getting initialized right. So we'll have to take a look at that. So it won't always be verbose or anything like that, but being able to touch these things is really good. What questions would you have on testing? I mean, what's something that like is of interest to you that you'd like a little bit more information on?
Yeah, I've been going through the chat, and we haven't really had many questions. So if anybody has questions now, wants to come off a mute, this is a good time to have key people present to talk about it. Hey, Mike, thank you for sharing that link to join the Open Help Slack group. I'm going to post that into the article that we post up for tonight's meeting, because I've sent that out to a bunch of people, and we really need to promote that because it is our Slack group to help people on the fly. So thanks about that. So any other questions about this? One of the things that I've been doing while you've been presenting is I'm taking like David was describing, real world sites that have already been updated a few times. They're not vanilla installs of DNN. Maybe they've gone through a few different upgrades themselves already. They have a few different modules installed. Tonight, I did 2 of them. I took one site that I ran through, and immediately with the first steps of the Telerik inspector that Mitch Sellers created, I was able to see that that site wasn't an initial candidate for us to continue deleting Telerik because there were so many different dependencies that were clearly still present. I took a second site and ran through it and had no problems. Instantly, the Telerik inspector showed that there were known dependencies, and I felt like that was going to be the case. So I have now been going through the steps to definitely remove and disable Telerik from that DNN instance. Daniel, I posted a couple of notes to you in Slack of some suggestions for text changes or additions to the release notes, but I actually think I found something. So I don't know if you want to talk about that on online here now, or if you want to just talk about it later, but I do have a note for an additional item or step that has to be in there.
I am just reading that now, sorry.
Oh, no worries. The one that I've written is kind of minor. David, when you were doing the work on this local DNN instance, and you were changing out the resource manager, did you also go through the steps of deleting the Telerik modules?
I did not go through
the Telerik DLLs, I mean, through the interface?
No.
Well, do me a favor, just to show it on screen, unless it interrupts what you're in the middle of.
Well, I just found an error. So I just deleted the user and saw this in the console, and the user's module does not show back up on that. So
does it show up as you refresh the page?
Well, what I want to do before I refresh the page is make sure I grab any kind of information and be able to have that on hand. This is an interesting one. I wasn't expecting to see something like this, but and this is a prime example of like testing basic features. You're touching so many core areas in the code, just by managing users and pages and stuff like that, that it would help. So I'm going to copy that into my clipboard here so that I can reference back to it later here in the file. Let's see. Yep, that's it. Okay, so if I reload this page, so we identified an error right there, right? So I want to come back in here, and that user was deleted and that's not showing up, but I don't know if they're in the recycle bin or not. Let's go check and see if they're in there. Let's see if we actually had a problem with that, or if it was something with the asset manager or something. Okay, that user is in there. Let's try to restore them, I guess, and see if we can reproduce this. So we'll go back to users, refresh, and and this is kind of one of the inherent problems with Persona Bar, which is the problem with the console stuff as well. The new editor is it can't get initialized because this page was already loaded and it's just in the current state. So you kind of have to reload it to see the users again. So it can trick you. Okay, so that user's back now. Let's see if we can delete it again. So I did delete user, delete. Now this time it didn't. See, this one sucks because like I just had it happen. So now I have to go back and think, what did I do?
What happened? What was different?
So,
why? Why did it trigger the first time? Right.
I think I'm going to start over. So I'm just going to remove deleted users just to clear all the users out that have been deleted there. And I know I started by adding a new user. So I called it test user, and then test user is the username. And I think I used my email address. I'm doing something here that's kind of from memory. I'm actually using the same data that I used last time. You won't always remember that, but if you kind of have these little scenarios in your brain of, you're always going to use this kind of naming convention. If you're doing this many times, you might want to do test user 1, test user 2, test user 3, or something like that. kind of come up with a pattern that you don't have to remember what you used when you were testing it the first time, if that makes any sense. So I saved that, and then I had a user there. Okay. I looked at around a few different things, but the first thing that I actually did performing action was to add them as an administrator. So I'm going to add them as an administrator, and I didn't send the email on that one. And then let's see, I went to roles over here, looked at them over here, and I think I removed them from the role here. Okay, nothing so far. And then I came back to users, and notice I didn't refresh my page here. This is really what it was before. And I think that might have been actually what the problem is. So I'm making a mental note that this came back to the state that it was before, even though I've already removed that user from the administrator. Now, if I were to refresh this page, the administrator should be gone, and it would work just fine. So I kind of already had a working theory in my head of what scenario was causing it, but we'll see if that stands true. So instead of refreshing the page, I'm going to go ahead and try to delete it again. And I think this is going to cause the error, and it does. Now, so I've got a working hypothesis here, working theory of what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reload this page, and I know we're running close to the end here, but this is an interesting one just to kind of see how the thought process works. So that user should be in deleted users now. So they've been soft deleted. So I'm going to not remove them. Sorry. I'm going to go to the recycle bin, pull it. Well, no, I'm going to go ahead and delete it. So we'll run through this again. We'll do it real quickly here. All right. So the user's been completely deleted. I'm going to add a new user. And this time when I come back to the users page after all that, I'm going to refresh the page and see if it deletes successfully. Oops. Test user, my email address, and password, and then save. Okay, so I've added the user. So now this is my third scenario, going through this. So I pretty much know my steps at this point. I'm going to add them to the administrator role, not sending an email, add. And then I'm going to go over to roles. I'm going to look at administrators. I'm going to remove them from there. Then I'll go back to users without refreshing the page. This time I'm going to refresh the page after I get back over here, right? And I think it's going to allow us to delete it just fine this time. So I refresh the page. Now I come into to delete the user. Well, if I were to click this, then I would see that administrators is not there, right? So if I do delete user now, I would expect to not get any errors on the right. But I did. Okay. So actually it happens regardless of what state that's in. So I now know what to report on this issue. So I'm going to definitely make notes of this one. As soon as we get off the meeting here, I'll type out my steps and I'll submit an issue for that. So that kind of makes sense how I kind of proved it to myself. And then now I feel real confident that I can recreate this every single time. And I'll make notes of the two different paths that I took to get there. Well, cool. I hope this helps everybody. In the testing world, please get involved and help us test, because the more eyes we get on this stuff, the higher quality the final release will be. And we really want to break that old stigma of the .0 releases not being safe, because it's so important that we allow people to be able to remove Telerik. We don't want them, just intuitively waiting to the .1 or the .2, patch release after the fact. We would really love for it to be a nice, stable release to start with. So the more issues we catch now, better that experience will be for everybody.
That's awesome.
Pure awesome, man. Okay. Well, Ryan, do you have any closing notes or anything like that that you'd like to say? Or
David, do you guys care if people, like, sometimes it's hard to write out all the steps to replicate something. What is there any kind of methodology where somebody could like make a video of what they're going through and walk through it? Just trying to figure out a way to get more people to report how to replicate errors, right? That's really important.
No,
you stressed that it's really important. I know that sometimes I've gone through, just on the video, it takes 30 seconds and then everything's there, just follow the mouse kind of thing.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, Gift, because that's a great alternative, or a way to augment your issue. I think you still need to write it out the best you can. Sure. But I've seen quite a few people put screencast links into the issue itself, for additional context in there.
So screencast, like I've got like a screen grabber. I don't know what it is. It's a feather on my Chrome bar, and man, it's great for just grabbing those little snippets of stuff. And
yeah.
So screencast is something that will capture your browser as you're going through something.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they'd say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I think a video is worth even more. So that's awesome. It's a good suggestion.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like Giff was describing in his browser window, I have a toolbar in Chrome that's a plugin called Loom, L-O-O-M, and Loom is an excellent video recorder. It's in your browser, so you're able to very easily record your screen. It'll also work with your camera and turn on your screen, your camera, so it will record a little inset of your face talking and recording audio if you want, or you turn it off. But you can also use it to record anything that's on the desktop. So you can use it to record things outside of your browser if you need to. So for testing and training for clients using DNN, I'll often do things in Loom and finish it with a link to that video so they can watch that. And I've included those before inside of GitHub issue posts. So it's an easy link to post in as a very straightforward link.
That's a great recommendation, Ryan, because with over 3 million users and over 10,000 reviews at 5 stars, that's pretty impressive. So yeah, I think that's probably worth worth checking out.
All right.
I've wanted one like that. That's good. I think I'll go ahead and
all right, good deal. I'll put a link to it in the chat as well, or in the articles for the meeting itself.
Hey, Ryan, remind me, maybe we can collect some of these and put them on your blog post or something out there, as well as the YouTube video out there, so that
yes,
we have these as resources as well.
Oh yes, I've been catching all of the links and references we've mentioned. I've already been writing up the articles, so we're in good shape.
Well, that's a great experience there.
Yep.
I was being facetious, but
no, ready to go.
Right. That's okay now. Yeah. All right. Well, evidently the handoff from Chrome extension was not good. All right. Good deal. Well, I'll go ahead and stop sharing so we can see everybody's wonderful mug shots here and blank screens. But thanks for everybody for joining and get involved.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight for October's Southern Fried DNN User Group meeting. We will have one more meeting this year. We traditionally take December off, and I don't know, under normal circumstances, the folks that are in the Charlotte, North Carolina area all get together and we go out for dinner. Who knows if we'll be doing that at all this year in 2020. But November, we will definitely have our meeting on the third Thursday of November. Actually, I haven't looked that far forward. How far in front of Thanksgiving is that? Do we need to adjust slightly?
I haven't even looked. Let's see here.
Thanksgiving. No, we're fine. The third Thursday is November the 19th, so we'll be in fine shape.
Well, Daniel said
so we will.
So, I think the Canadians do that way early, right?
I missed it. What, Thanksgiving?
Your Thanksgiving has already happened, right?
Oh yeah, that's in the past. That's done. Turkey Day is over.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate it. Thank you.